we know what you're looking for.
Your specially grilled newspaper, spiced with lifestyle, sport, entertainment, politics, business, and international news. The Voice is available every Friday. Subscribe now. The Voice. Let's find some!
Dumelang Batswana Betu, welcome to the Voice of the People with Chief and Fangs. I am your friendly Fangs, and that's my co-host there, Mr. Chief. Today we've got an interesting topic, don't we, today, Mr. Chief?
We always have interesting topics, Fangs.
Yes. This one is radical blind, and I'm quite intrigued to see how you're going to be supporting it. Basically, for everybody who doesn't know, today we will be discussing whether or not serial rapists and child molesters should be chemically castrated so that they cannot commit these crimes anymore. Now my colleague here, Chief, is going to be supporting the motion. Na ke tla mo reetse be ke utlwa gore a mme ke dumalana le ene kana nnyaa. Chief, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Fangs. Okay, first of all, before we deal with the why, because that is pretty much the bulk of what we're here to talk about today. First, I'm going to tell you about the how, because yaga Fangs anzabua ho castrate all of these different things, right? Yeah, no. Just to be clear, se proposal gompieno ga se go gagola batho ya go gagola dikgomo ya go kgaola motho the organs. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about chemical castration. So this is a simple injection into your pituitary gland, which is the gland producing testosterone. So basically what's going to happen is you won't have sexual desires at all. So you won't be able to get sexually aroused, and it's going to completely suppress those hormones, right? So that's the how. This has been done in other countries throughout the world. It's been done in places like Indonesia, in Singapore, in places like Ukraine, and even go states, in the states like Alabama. This is a condition of parole, right? So before they release you as a rapist or you're eligible for parole, you have to get chemically castrated. Okay. Yeah, no. Why? Because now we know the how.
Go ahead.
Look, thanks. We are in the middle of a crisis, right? We are literally a rape nation. Every week there's a headline about some heinous crime being committed, and it's even gotten worse because these days there's children involved. You know, people are raping their grandmothers. So these are very harsh crimes, and we need to have harsh measures because what has been in place so far is not working, thanks. Right? So this is why drastic times call for drastic measures. So we need to do this one as a strong message, right? Because we want the punishment to fit the crime. Currently, a minimum sentence for rape is 10 years. You can probably be out after 15 years. But the scarring that you've committed on the individual, it's lifelong. Again. So we feel as though we need to also deliver justice in a way that is also lifelong. Look, it'll never make up for it, again. But it sends a very strong message to the perpetrator that Luena, it's something that you'll never forget in your life. It's something that will be with you throughout your life, right? But secondly, this is a huge deterrent factor, right? And I know, some people from the comments that we've been getting, because we put this up Monday, I don't know about rape, right? But that goes against the idea of why we pass laws against crimes in the first place, right? Because we have crimes, we have laws like capital punishment, the death penalty, and the idea is that you send a strong message about certain crimes to reduce those crimes from happening. One could argue maybe that's why we have a lower crime rate than other neighboring countries, because we have such a strong stance on things like the death penalty, right? So we need a strong stance, Fangs. I think up until now, there hasn't been any measures that are in place to say to show that this issue is being dealt with strong. And I get it, this is the only way to fight this, right? We can combat this with all other strategies. But for now, I believe the time has come that we need to do something. And like I said, chemically castrating, it's just an injection, and the person loses all use of their member. So, I mean, they can still urinate, they still have those functions, but then they won't get sexually aroused. So, there's my case for today, thanks. Let's hear how you defend these rapists.
Okay, no, Chief. And you know, Radu Malana, on a number of points, right? I do agree with you that Holohana, we are unfortunately a rape country, right? And there's something that we need to do about this. In a society like this. But on how do we send this message? How is it that we intervene in the right way to stop these kinds of crimes happening? And drastic times call for drastic measures.
Yes.
And solution chemical castration and then from then on, how produce a testosterone and they don't get aroused.
Sexually aroused, yeah. Yes.
But now, first of all, how obviously we produce testosterone for a reason. Right? There's a reason. Testosterone serves a purpose in your body. It's not just for sexual arousal. It's for you to you grow hair, beards, all these things for you to be able to function, to have the kind of strength that you do in life generally. So what we're doing here is we're changing the chemical composition of a human being. And that is very, very drastic indeed, right? Particularly, after this, they can have health complications. I don't think we understand entirely how these hormone treatments work. But now what if this person ends up growing breasts or other sorts of health complications like that because they don't have enough testosterone? So before we take steps like this, we have to really wonder, have we done, number one, have we done everything we possibly can to prevent these crimes? And number two, do we fully understand the kind of criminality that is happening here and the cause of this criminality so that we can actually prevent it wholesale? Because this isn't just a problem of sexual crimes, right? It's a problem of criminality. And if you look at the causes of these things, we tell there's a lot of common causes. So for example, it's not a coincidence. The vast majority of people who are convicted for committing sexual crimes are people who have been victimized in that way themselves. So we are getting into an area where we are dealing with people, they have been victims already. The state did not prevent them from being victims. And then the state steps in only when it's time to punish these people and deform them physiologically. And I say that that's extremely problematic. We have to look at other things. What leads to these failures in society? What causes people behaving this way? And is the state doing everything before these crimes happen in order to prevent it? And what you do, usually when you the case by case, and when these criminals, these serial rapists and these other people, when they get caught eventually and when they go to prison, you find out, or when they commit their worst crimes, you find out for decades or years and years and years, all sorts of different problems socializing, problems adjusting, adapting with people, and that just has been building and building over time until they became that person who's committing these crimes. So all throughout this time, the state is not there to help these people. And then you look at where do these people tend to come from, right? And the ones that we see on TV, on the newspapers, on whatever, the ones that are getting convicted for these crimes, right? They always come from low-income backgrounds. They always come from low-income neighborhoods. So what you end up seeing here is it's not just a problem. There's a problem. Unless you want to look at it, it's not a problem. There's a sexual rape pandemic just happening out of nowhere in Botswana. Unless you want to look at it as only poor people are the ones who are raping, then there's something that is severely happening with the way that the state is dealing with people and dealing with society. So we need to look at it that way. Before then we go to a human being. I want to just end with like an example that shocked me when I was reading up about this debate, right? A couple months ago in January, just before President Trump left office, there was a lady that was executed called Lisa Montgomery. This lady committed the most horrendous crime. She basically strangled a woman and then cut out her fetus because she wanted a baby. And then she was put on death row and she was executed in January. But then when you read about what happened to this woman was gang raped in front of her mother. She was prostituted by her mother. Her stepfather used to abuse her when she was a child. All of these things happened to her as a minor. And then eventually she ends up getting executed. So we have to look at ourselves. When a solution like that ends up happening, hey, she got executed, fine. Do we think that that is a good resolution to what happened? Or do we think that maybe society should have done a lot more, a lot earlier to prevent that horrible crime from happening and to prevent all the things that happened to this woman and to prevent her being executed in the first place? So we mustn't be focusing on executing people.
Yeah. Look,
or whatever.
Yeah. We had some very interesting comments that are actually in line with what you're saying. We'll get to the comments in a bit, right? But I just have a couple of questions for you, Fangs. Just with what you're talking about this lady, it's sound as if you are making excuses for they've been through trauma and now they want to inflict trauma on other people. What about the victim? Would the victim, that cycle of trauma is just going to continue? Because then will victimize another way in the future.
You see, that's exactly it, right? The first question I want to ask is, in response to that, is when somebody goes through an experience like that, they've been gang raped and prostituted by their mother, do you expect that person to be a normal functioning member of society?
Look, that's one issue. But we still cannot ignore the fact that the crime happened. And I believe that there are mechanisms to be able to try and help these people. I don't think that it's enough for you to say, because you went through some traumatic experience, this is why you're like this. It sounds very much like an excuse. And also what you're talking about, physiological, is that really the issue here? Because we need to address the issue of rape. And nowhere in your speech, the fact how we send a strong message to would-be rapists that, look, if you do commit this crime, this is what's going to happen. Because the current crimes are just not enough. Like the current punishment, sorry.
Yeah, you see, what I look at it as, Chief, the reason why I keep getting back to this is trying to send a message to somebody who is traumatized and irrational like that. And you call it making excuses, but that's why I keep going back to, if somebody has been through these kinds of experiences, you can't expect them to behave. It would be strange if they were a normal functioning member of society. So then we have to start wondering, what kind of society do we have that led to that person going through that in the first place? And it's a cycle. So it keeps going on, and yes, you're castrating somebody, but that doesn't mean that you're ending that cycle. And then there's still things that are happening to people. And because these are usually the failures that happen. So half the time you find somebody is getting bail that never should have gotten bail, right? Half the time you'll find that people are not getting rehabilitated in prison, so they become worse criminals. So yes, and then there's still more people that are committing these crimes, and then there's more. Is that actually a solution? Is that the society that we want to be? And then after then what? Then the is criminal, and then we're going to have all these harsh punishments. I mean, look, America has the death penalty, but they also have the highest rate of homicides in the world, or in the developed world rather. Right? Because a lot of these things, there isn't a correlation between punishment and crime necessarily. It's about how you prevent the crime. How do you rehabilitate? How do you prevent the causes of these crimes? You know what I mean?
Let's get to the comments.
Let's get to the comments there.
yeah.
Let me open a couple of them
Yeah.
because Yakobua, this has definitely been an issue that has been of interest. And the first comment that we've got here, let's see, is from Josi Polo Emastos Ramorojo. Are Aba haholo hela cause the victims basala with that trauma for the rest of their life. Then the rapist is sentenced to 10 years in jail, enjoying free accommodation, free food, and they come out and face the victim and tell them nkile ka go thubetsa olela minna ke jela monate castrate but say like abudutu. Right?
Precisely.
Go on a point,
Look,
Dara.
that's my point. Is because in everything you're saying, you are kore ulina thata mo sideng ya batho, the criminal. And I don't think Udila is the victim at all, because the person at the center of this debate is the person who's going to suffer this lifelong trauma. Kind of that's the thing about rape, right? You know, we wouldn't know like the dynamics of it, but it's a psychologically scarring thing that you live with for life. So it's not enough to just say that, yeah, Rana, you've been through some things and this is why you did this, because it's an excuse that anybody could use, and you're not addressing the victim's pain.
No, I'm not addressing the victim's pain. You're right. And that's unfortunately because I can't address the victim's pain. Kore, there's nothing that you are doing either that's going to take away that pain or suggesting. Or no matter what, there's nothing we're doing to take away that pain. The only thing that we can do is try and make sure that nobody else goes through that pain or another obscene pain again. And your solution seems to be, let's create more pain.
No, I mean, while you're looking for the next comment, look, the idea here, thanks, is that punishment must be some sort of equivalent to the crime. And what you're saying is true. You can never pay back that pain, right? But the type of punishment, 10 years is just not enough. Like Motabu, after 10 years, will hit the hell out. You get what I mean?
And now it's about 10 years. But anyway, the next comment. Just like capital punishment, the poor will get it. Those with the capital and power will walk free. That's from Butilo Gambino Tsimologo. Unfortunately, what always happens is it's going to be poor people, just like how it's always poor people that get executed. It's going to be poor people, Baba Hapola.
No, not true. I mean, that is maybe our criminal justice system.
Exactly.
Maybe you favor but that's not true. Look, there's famous rape cases out there in the world. You know, the former IMF chief, Dominic Strauss-Kahn,
who was
convicted of
acquitted,
rape.
Charged and acquitted.
Yeah, but my point is, you see, it went to court, and we can't now debate the merits of the criminal justice system. I know what you're saying is generally our justice system high favor.
Okay.
And I think that it's an indictment on the justice system. So now how do that one, it can't even solve it.
It's an indictment. The fact that we've got this much rape happening in our country is an indictment of our criminal justice system, because they should be doing more. Well, and they're not. And here's another thing, right? Because you're not I really bet how court works, right? Because what you'll find is, right, in any case, any country, any type of crime, there's always false convictions. That's why we have appeal processes, right? But they don't catch everything. Just like how when DNA evidence came up, a lot of people who had been in prison on death row started getting acquitted because new evidence, new understanding of the crime came out. So yeah, no, the unfortunate thing is, poor people are a lot more likely to get falsely convicted because they have poorer lawyers, if they have lawyers at all. Yeah. So now, this is a real thing. Okay. So yeah, no, and afterwards, if you find out that you got the wrong person, how do you then repair it when you are a government that castrated a human being?
We'll check one more comment, right? But this whole idea that our criminal justice system only favors the rich, I think that it is unfair. It's an unfair label, because I think our government tries its best to make sure that everyone gets equal and fair representation, even the courts. You know, so now essentially what you're doing, you're saying that our justice system is biased. So, I think we can't get into that one first.
It's not biased.
It's a different debate.
It's not biased. The best lawyers charge the most, and the
Okay.
poor people can't afford them. But one more comment, right? What's it? I personally don't think so. If we apply bottleneck controls to problems and issues that bedevil our society, we will be shooting ourselves on both feet. We need to scrutinize extenuating circumstances that lead to societal immoralities. The direction our people present as adults and the youth are taking is presenting a self-destruction button, and if something is not done by relevant authorities, we won't reach Vision 2036, Personal Perceptions and Observation by Ruben Ndlovu.
People have all sorts of excuses, but I think that's a cop-out. Do you know why? Because not everybody rapes. Not everybody who's been through traumatic experiences rape.
Yes.
So I think as individuals, we need to take accountability. Just gotta blame I've been through trauma, so we don't know how to rape. No. That's a poor excuse, folks.
On that note, I think that's a solid note to end this week's episode on. Thank you very much, Batswana Betu, for watching The Voice of the People with Chief and Fangs. Tune in next week.
Yeah.
We know what you're looking for.
Your specially grilled newspaper, spiced with lifestyle, sport, entertainment, politics, business, and international news. The Voice is available every Friday. Subscribe now. The Voice.